Welcome to Module 2 of this program. In this particular class, we're going to teach you how to gain total inner peace. What I mean with this is the idea that all negative charges that you have had towards other people, other events, even towards yourself in the past, you're able to clear from your being. This is an essential step towards being able to go into a lot of the more advanced techniques that we'll be teaching you in the future. Now, a lot of people dismiss inner peace. What we don't realize is that as we go through life, things happen that we take on as charges. Now, a charge could be an issue we have against a parent, a teacher. It could be something about ourselves that we need to forgive. But what I've discovered in a lab is that these charges actually dramatically influence your brainwave activity, which in turn dramatically influences your ability to tap into altered states of consciousness. So I'm going to share with you a story of something that happened to me in the last couple of months that really changed the way I view the mind. Basically, I got to attend a retreat, a very unique retreat, and it was with some of the most remarkable people in the world. If you look at that picture, you'll notice the famous author J.J. Virgin, you'll notice the actor Brendan Routh from Superman Returns. So all of us are here having breakfast together as we head out to an institute where we're about to learn how to control our brain waves in a unique way. So when we get to the institute, they hook us up to these wires. Depending on what class you're going for, the beginner or the advanced class, they take these wires to your scalp, and these wires measure brainwave coming out from your scalp. It's hooked up to what is called an electroencephalograph, which is an EEG machine. So that's a group of us, including Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey is the famous biohacker. He's the author of The Bulletproof Diet. He's the famous biohacker who's helping bring this technology out to the masses. And if you look in between us there, you'll see that is a chamber. So we would spend 3 to 4 hours a day in that chamber, sitting on these sofas with computer equipment monitoring our brainwaves. And what happens is this equipment is hooked up to sound. So that's what it looks like within the chamber. It's hooked up to sound. You will see those devices around me are speakers pointed at me. And as I learn to control my brainwaves, I'm able to change the frequency and the amplitude of the sound. So when I go into different states of mind, I hear the sounds change. And also what happens is every 2 minutes, a 2-minute interval is called an epoch. And every 2 minutes, the epoch ends. I open my eyes and I see these numbers on the screen. These numbers represent a number of things. They represent my alpha brainwave frequency from the back to the middle to the front of my head, and they also measure the coherence of my alpha. So what am I trying to do here, right? Well, the doctor who discovered this, Dr. James Hart, he was fascinated by neurofeedback, and he started studying all these remarkable people who had had their brains put in these machines and studied by these machines. What he found is that brainwave patterns were different based on different individuals. Zen monks, billionaires, psychics, intuits, people who had mystical abilities, people who had really prominent visible auras, all had different brainwaves. What he also found is that you could train people to replicate these features. One of the things that James Hart said is that in 60 hours of training, he can train someone to develop a halo, like many spiritual saints. In a further 70 or 80 hours of training, you could train someone to function consciously in psychic states, which has to do with theta brainwave frequency. He says you go for about 200 hours of training, he can teach you to alter reality. That training, he says, is by invite only. That involves training your delta brainwave frequency, which has to do with warping reality, according to these scientists. Now, I was going here for a scientific training. I wasn't expecting to hear about halos and intuition and warping reality. But that's what he says he's actually observed as people go through this training. So following the training, what happens is we sit around in a circle with a counselor and we analyze our brainwaves and we look for different patterns which were happening. So I got to study a lot of different exercises I learned from different programs, such as my own programs, the Envisioning Method, other programs that we publish at Mindvalley, and see the impact this has on the brain. So, for example, if a program says it helps increase intuition, is my brain showing theta frequency burst as I'm doing the program? And that helps me gauge the validity of these programs. It's a really interesting approach. So This is what a brainwave scan looks like. So you'll notice right at the bottom there, FD. You'll see the pointer is on FD. FD stands for fast delta. So delta waves, for example, have to do when you are altering reality. So this is my brain waves when I am visualizing an outcome happening. So I'm visualizing a particular event in my life that I want to see happen, and my brain goes into a delta state. And what they're looking at over here is not just delta frequency, but coherence in delta. That means both hemispheres are functioning in full delta. So being able to function in delta, according to them, is about 1% of the population. This doesn't mean that if you don't have that, you cannot practice creative visualization or alter reality. Our thoughts are always creating our reality. But if you have it, you have a magnified ability to do it. Many people who are billionaires, who are very prominent impact on the world, have this ability. Now, another ability that we observed over here is theta. So if you look at the chart, you will see BT. BT stands for theta. So you will notice certain theta burst in this chart. You'll notice the coherence patterns where, now you're not looking at the black line, you're looking at the gray or blue line that is below the black line. Okay, that shows you your coherence. Basically, it's a mathematical formula that looks at the black line, which is very complex, and simplifies it. So what's happening over here is I'm going into theta. So this is probably a situation where I was downloading information. One of the people in the chamber with me ended up writing an entire speech while she was there, while she was meditating. She was in theta. She said she was downloading just information on what to say for her upcoming speech. So theta is creativity, it is psychic ability, it's flashes of intuition. And what you're seeing over here is alpha. This is an extended alpha state. If you look down, you'll see VA. That stands for alpha. So alpha is one of the states that is easiest to get into. Alpha is when you're in a state of relaxed daydreaming, when you're in meditation. Alpha is generated through compassion, through feelings of connectedness, through sparks of creativity. So the alpha state is an extremely easy state to get into. And most of you who meditate go into the alpha state. The thing is, being able to sustain alpha over a period of time, that's what we all need training on. So this particular training I attended was actually just on alpha. And we're going to talk about that. We're only going to talk about alpha. See, when you try to go to theta, it's a very different approach. You're not meditating. You're almost daydreaming. When you're doing the theta training, you're basically lying with your neck back on a sofa because it's hard to stay fully conscious while in theta. When you go for delta training, that one takes tens and tens and tens of hours. I was able to hit waking delta because I've been meditating since I was 14. So today, we're going to talk about alpha, and we're going to talk about how to get inner peace. And we're going to talk about how inner peace relates to alpha, and alpha relates to inner peace. So at the training, this happened in Victoria, British Columbia. James Hart, the scientist, had trained several thousand people to raise their alpha waves. And one day he had this lady come in, and he told the lady, wow, things are going amazing. Your alpha is really, really, really peaking. What's going on here? And the lady said, well, I kept bringing up all these people that I absolutely hate. And he goes, well, that's not supposed to work. Alpha is about compassion, about love. If you're thinking about people who you hate, shouldn't be raising your alpha. So he decided to probe further and figure out what was going on. Well, it turns out that this lady was, you see, at the Institute, they don't really teach you techniques. They put you in a chamber and you're supposed to learn yourself, right? So in the early stages, there were no techniques. But what this lady was telling him was that she would, in her mind, bring to her mind someone that she had a grudge against, that had wronged her in the past. She would see them vividly, she would get absolutely angry with them, and then she would forgive them. And James was shocked. This was causing peaks in her alpha waves. And what he realized is that forgiveness causes your alpha to go up. Now, when I say alpha go up, what it means is that the amplitudes of your alpha wave goes up. You're producing stronger alpha. So they measure up in two ways. Amplitudes go up, so you see the lines go higher, and coherence goes up, which means your alpha waves in both brain hemispheres are synchronized. Coherence is the most important thing. So if your amplitudes are not very high, but your coherence is synchronized, that is better than just having high amplitudes. So he figured out that forgiveness was a key to raising alpha. He would never have guessed this because it seems like such a simple practice, but it was a key to raising alpha. And the beauty about this particular training, right, is that in 7 days, you can develop the brainwave frequency of someone who has been practicing Zen meditation for 21 to 40 years. That's why the training is called 40 Years of Zen. You can Google it, 40yearsofzen.com. It's by my friend Dave Asprey. Tell him I sent you. Now, so to get the brainwave frequency of a Zen Buddhist monk, what he was finding, therefore, is that forgiveness helped you get there fastest. Forgiveness can, when done right, when done using the technique I'm going to teach you, can put you in these states of being that many people only see when they've been meditating for years. So, what we're going to talk about in this class is the power of forgiveness. We're going to talk about how to put forgiveness on overdrive, how to truly clear so much pain that you might be carrying in you, sometimes even pain that you may have forgotten, but it's in you nonetheless. And by clearing it, you put yourself in a different state of being. This is an essential stepping stone to everything that we're going to learn. I wrote an article about my experiences at 40 Years of Zen that got shared widely. I want you to know that what I'm sharing here is stuff that I couldn't share in the article because the article is public. What I'm sharing here is private stuff and more advanced techniques, about 10 times more advanced than the simple basic outline I shared in that article. So let's go on to the benefits of forgiveness. When you truly forgive, you experience decreased levels of anger and hostility, increased feelings of love, enhanced capacity to trust, freedom from events of the past which sometimes bog you down, improved health, improvements from psychiatric disorders. Some detailed studies, one study found that people who practice forgiveness would heal their back pain. It's as if we were carrying these grudges physically in our nervous system. It was causing us pain. So when you forgive, pains often go away. Greater happiness. What they found in this study is that when you forgive people who hurt you, you make yourself responsible for your own happiness. And not only is this an immediate effect in happiness, but when you start doing this regularly, you experience greater improvements in your overall happiness than people who do not forgive. Better heart health. One study found a link between forgiving someone for betrayal and improvements in blood pressure and heart rate and a decreased workload for the heart. And one of the most dramatic instances, James Hart found this at his lab, people who were forgiving were losing weight. Now, I got to witness this for myself. I have a friend who is in her 50s, and she is an amazing, beautiful woman, but she is fairly obese, overweight. But she's proud of it. She's totally fine with it. And I've known her for almost 7 years. In the last 1 year, I saw her, and her weight had just plummeted. She had lost almost 50 pounds. And I asked her what happened, and she said, well, I forgave my ex-husband. So she was carrying a hurt against her ex-husband for leaving her when she was in her early 20s and she was pregnant with his child. He left her. And she loved him, but, and she knew why he left her. Basically, he got arrested. And it was for a minor drug charge, but he was jailed for a very long time. As you know, in America, the prison sentencing system is completely out of whack. And you can get jailed for 20, 30 years for just carrying a tiny quantity of drugs. So he was jailed for a very long time, and she was carrying this grudge against him. And finally, one day in her 50s, she forgave him. And she told me the weight just started falling off. It was amazing. Another example. Well, before I go into that example, if you really want to learn about the benefits of forgiveness, the book Radical Forgiveness is a remarkable book by Colin Tipping. And a lot of the studies I shared come from this book. Forgiveness of abuse. So when I was at the 40 Years of Zen Institute, there was a person there who had been for one of the trainings. And he was staying at the hotel with us, with the other students, as we would wake up every morning and head to the trainings. In the counseling session one day, he was very, very upset because he had to forgive a family member who had sexually abused him as a child. This had obviously put him in a lot of pain. He was a man in his late 40s, and he said he lost all the innocence of childhood. This was a really severe, horrible, disgusting case of abuse from a family member that he had trusted. He was a 7-year-old boy, and it really tormented him. Now, in this session, he had to forgive this family member. So he had to see the family member, remember what happened, and then forgive the situation. It wasn't easy. It was difficult. It was painful. But he did the forgiveness exercise anyway. And the very next day, we were all having breakfast, and he came to me. He was in a state of shock. He was a bit of a skeptic when he went in, but he showed me his mobile phone. And this particular family member whom he hadn't spoken to in 3 months. Now, he had forgiven the family member for a lot. So it's not like they were no longer speaking, but he hadn't spoken to this family member for 3 months. And he didn't fully respect this family member. This family member had sent him a video that morning within 48 hours of doing the exercise. And the family member WhatsApped him and said, "Watch this video. I want to apologize for everything I did to you when you were a kid." And he was in complete shock. And it was really magnificent to see that how rapidly this attitude of forgiveness could actually create a ripple in the real world. Now, I did some forgiveness of my own, and I found that some of the people I forgave, they would email me. One person actually emailed me. I forgave him for a really, really major thing that he did to me that I felt was wrong. He emailed me within 2 weeks, telling me that, he really felt that what happened in the past was in the past, and if I was ever in his hometown, he would love to host me, have me visit, stay over at his place. It was just a really interesting email to get. So I had to forgive some serious things that happened, and it really helped heal me. 3 months before being in this 40 Years of Zen program where I had to learn forgiveness, I had a horrible situation happen to me. I run an office in Kuala Lumpur. We have about 200 employees, and naturally with that many people from all around the world coming, you needed an operations department that could coordinate arrivals, make sure people could get apartments, coordinate everything from air conditioner repairs and employee housing to making sure our office is running right. And I found out that a guy who had worked for me, who had run this operations for office maintenance and housing, had been stealing money from our company. He had basically started up to 7 fake vendors, 7 fake businesses with people he found out in the streets, including another employee he could have collaborated with and that employee's cousin. And they used these 7 fake businesses to overcharge the company for everything from air conditioner repairs to plumbing to furniture delivery. They delivered a sloppy job. They overcharged us, and because he had the authority to sign off on these checks for vendors, he was signing off money to himself. By the time he was caught, he had swindled the company of over $100,000 plus. We are still dealing with the damage. It was possibly significantly more. So I was deeply hurt, felt very betrayed, but the worst was yet to come. We let him go, and we reported him to the police, and immediately he went on a rampage. He decided to help to threaten me, to do everything he could to damage this company that had given him a job for 3.5 years, and we were incredibly nice to him. When his performance was slipping, rather than fire him, we even, because he had 2 kids and a wife, rather than fire him, even though his performance had been slipping over the last couple of months, we had even given him an opportunity where he could work more hours from home and still earn somewhat of a salary while he found another job. And even after I'd done this and he had begged to retain his salary at least for a couple of months, we had done all of this, and yet we found that he was stealing from us. So it was deeply hurtful for me because I'd been super nice to this guy, but what then happened was I started getting threats. He threatened to have me followed by gangsters, to have my car followed. For a brief while, my wife and I had to discuss getting a bodyguard, ensuring that our kid, when the kid was dropped off in school, had a bodyguard following his school bus. We had to talk about bulletproofing the windows on our car. He sent the fire department to our office to shut us down, saying on a false tip to the fire department saying our office was a fire trap. He wrote nasty articles about us on job review sites like Glassdoor, where we have phenomenal ratings from our employees. So it was painful to see all of this damage repeating itself over and over again. And boy, it was hard to forgive this man who had been messing around with my life and my sanity for months. I had a lot of forgiving to do, basically. What interesting happened is that as I went through the exercise I'm about to teach you and I forgave this man, I genuinely forgive him. To the point where if I were to see him now, I could just calmly sit down with him. I could calmly have breakfast or tea with him and truly not condone what he did because it was wrong, but see that he was a flawed human being and not feel hate or anger and be calm about it. And this is really helping me because I'm going to have to face this man in court in a couple of months. So the thing is, when you forgive, It doesn't mean that you are pardoning someone. You know, some people do criminal activity. You got to make sure that justice is served. But forgiveness is for yourself. It makes you peaceful. It makes you hit that next state. And here's the interesting that happened. When I had my brains hooked up to these machines and they were measuring my alpha amplitudes, I saved forgiving this man for last. I saved him for the last day, on literally day 7, because I had to forgive everyone else in my life who were easier to forgive than this man. But when I forgave him, all of a sudden, I opened my eyes at the end of that epic when the beep came on after the 2-minute interval, and I saw that I had scored my highest alpha increase. The deeper the forgiveness, the more difficult the forgiveness, the higher the increase in your alpha. And these increases stay with you. So if I were to measure my brain right now, I'm still at that level because I got this massive burden off me. So what we're going to learn in this class is how to forgive and how to make forgiveness truly, truly, truly powerful. Because when you forgive, you are putting your entire being in the next level of operation. So now let's get on with the exercise. These are the instructions on how to run the forgiveness exercise on your own. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to teach you how to forgive. I'm going to teach you how to get in the right brainwave state to forgive. And then I'm going to guide you through the exercise. So we'll first learn the how, and then we'll do the what. Important thing to remember is you can forgive anything. I've spoken of examples of forgiving some of the most horrible things, from people who have threatened to harm me to that person whom I encountered who had been the victim of horrible abuse as a 7-year-old. No matter how horrible the thing is, you can forgive anything. Nelson Mandela, as you might recall, forgave his jailers for imprisoning him for over 20 years. You see, forgiveness is not pardoning. Someone may have done something that is illegal, that is wrong, and it doesn't mean that you lay off reporting them to the authorities. I am still reporting that person and confronting him in court for the theft that he did. But I forgive him because I know by forgiving him, I'm really healing myself. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do with me removing the charges, the anger, the dread within me when I see him. Forgiveness frees you. So when you forgive someone else, it really is about freeing yourself. And the nuance is this: the other person does not have to forgive. Only you do. If you've gone through a horrible divorce, you can forgive your ex-spouse. Doesn't mean you need them to forgive you. See, in some practices, they say that you should forgive the other person and imagine the other person forgiving you. What you're learning here doesn't require that. You do not need to have them forgive you. This is completely within your control. And it doesn't mean that you are pardoning them or you are justifying what they did. You are not. You're simply seeing that they are a flawed human being, that what happened, what they did, was the result of numerous errors and upbringing flaws in their part, and you understand that you are strong enough to not carry the pain with you. So, another thing that happened in James Hart's studies is he found that forgiveness truly, truly, truly happens when you are having an alpha high. That means when you're in high alpha. What this means is that, well, I'll explain it this way. Every morning when I was doing the 6-phase meditation, I would practice forgiveness. So I was always forgiving. Even the people who wronged me in major ways, I would always just see them and I would forgive them. But when I was in this chamber, really, really, really doing the exercises I'm about to teach you now, while generating high alpha waves, that is when I forgave, I truly forgave. I didn't have to go back and repeatedly forgive the person like I was doing before. I truly forgave. It's like, poof, it was gone. And I would then see results in the physical world that correlated with that forgiveness. Peace would suddenly occur, not just inner peace, but with, for example, that crazy man, psychopath I was facing. The troubles that he was giving me just disappeared. It just stopped. I don't even know what happened to him. It's like he disappeared from my life. The person I was with who had been abused as a child, he got that video from his abuser apologizing for something that happened years ago. So remarkable shifts in reality happen. Remarkable inner shifts happen when you forgive in high alpha. The thing is, you got to get to high alpha. Now, those of you who meditate shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to go into that daydream state in meditation where you can forgive. But if you're just starting out, I want to teach you a technique. So The technique comes from a book called The Silva Mind Control Method. The book was written in 1977 or so by Jose Silva. Jose Silva basically says, and this is true, that when you wake up in the morning, you are in the alpha level of mind. So the first 5 minutes or so, when you get out of bed and you're stretching just before you head to the bathroom to brush your teeth, you're in alpha. So what you want to do is you want to remember the feeling of this state and be able to bring it back. So he suggests a technique called the 40 days process, and it works like this. It takes 40 days to train your brain, but just like good hypnosis, you can train your brain to bring alpha on demand. See, when I join my fingers together like this, I go into alpha. That's easy. This is called a trigger. I've trained my brain to do it. Now, here's how I started. So I tried this out when I was 14 years old. So I was a teenager, and it worked for me then with my crazy teenage mind. It should work for you. For 10 days, so total training is 40 days. For 10 days, you wake up, you sit up in bed. Don't lie back because you fall asleep. Sit up. You're already in alpha. You're going to count backwards from 100 to 1. So now this whole process may take you 3 to 4 minutes. So you count backwards 100, 99, 98, 97, 96. Your eyes are closed. And when you hit 1, trust that you are in alpha. Because you're doing it in the morning, you're in alpha anyway. Just trust that when you hit 1, you're in alpha. Don't worry about, all the stuff you read about in meditation, listening to your breath, clearing your thoughts. Don't worry about any of that. Just count from 100 to 1. Trust that when you hit 1 on the first 10 days, you hit alpha. Then you go on to the second 10 days. So now you're in day 11 to day 20. You only count from 50 to 1. And trust that when you hit 1, you're in alpha. Then day 21 to 30, you're counting from 25 to 1. And then from 10 to 1. So the total sequence looks like that. For 10 days, count from 100 to 1. When you hit 1, trust you're in alpha. For the next 10 days, 50 to 1. The next 10 days, 25 to 1. And on day 31 to 40, 10 to 1. After that, you can count from 5 to 1. So on day 41, feel free to count from 5 to 1 and you will be at alpha. Jose Silva tried this on millions of people. The technique worked. What you're doing is you're conditioning your brain to remember the feeling of alpha and to bring you to alpha as you're counting backwards. But as you continue doing this, it takes you less and less and less time to count backwards. Eventually, I was getting to alpha 10 to 1. And I could feel it. You could feel yourself in that light state. After a while, you start to recognize it. Now, as you continue doing this, what happens is you start getting used to alpha. So it starts feeling less and less unusual. So when you're in day 31 or so, you can count from 10 to 1. You'll be at alpha, but you won't feel that same magical difference that you felt in the first 10 days. That's okay. That's because you're simply getting used to it. It's like the first time you try a new drink. It's incredible, a new food. And later on, as you eat it regularly, it's just, it doesn't have that same magic, that same charm. So understand that you are getting to alpha, but as you get used to it, it starts feeling more normalized. But you are there. So at this point, any one of you can get to alpha almost from, remember, you are already at alpha in day 1. It's just that it takes a longer time. You're counting from 100 to 1. But all of you should be able to get to alpha at least by day 31 by just counting from 10 to 1. It is that easy. Okay, so you're in alpha. Now, the second thing you got to do is you got to hack intuition. So I've just teach you how to hack alpha without having an expensive EEG machine in your room. Now let's talk about hacking intuition, because this was a very important aspect of the training. So how do you know when you've truly forgiven? You got to listen to a gut inner voice. So James Hart at the Institute, 40 Years of Zen, found that you need to hack the way you create intuition. He wasn't there to teach people how to directly turn on their intuition. He wanted to give them a simple hack. Now, the hack has to do with imaginary counselors. So first time you do this, don't go into the forgiveness ritual. Instead, I want you to bring into mind 3 guides. So do it now. Bring into mind 3 guides. If you want, it could be a famous leader from the past. It could be Abraham Lincoln. It could be a spiritual leader like Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha. Anyone, just in your mind, bring together 3 guides. Okay, so you're going to have 3. And when I did this, I saw I imagined my guides. I saw a beautiful blonde woman, a beautiful older brunette woman, and a panda. For whatever reason, I saw a panda. So those were my 3 guides: this beautiful blonde, beautiful older brunette woman, and a panda. Now, you're going to be using the guides as you do this. What happens is, after you go through the forgiveness exercise, you're going to kind of imagine as if the guides are watching you, and they are your advisors or your angels or whatever you want to call it, or your giant panda, right? And you're going to ask them one by one, am I done for today? So I turn to the first one, am I done for today? And again, you're doing this in your head. The second one, the third one. They may be behind you, they may be in front of you, it doesn't matter. You feel your attention on them and you ask them, am I done for today? And if even one of them says no, you repeat the process, okay? Until all three of them say, you're done. And then you know you're done with this forgiveness exercise and you can move on for that day. So you're going to choose 3 guides. Think about your guides right now, and I'm going to get off the panda picture so it doesn't influence you. So pick any 3 people. You don't have to get it right. Just think about historical figures, great advisors, giant animals, a beautiful man or a woman. Just think about your 3 advisors, but pick 3 of them. They know how to fast rules to it. Now, an interesting story. In the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Napoleon Hill talks about a similar technique for activating intuition. He calls it the counselor technique. Think and Grow Rich was written in the 30s and 40s. Now, back then, you couldn't commonly talk about meditation or intuition, but Napoleon Hill swore by this technique. He called it the counselor technique, sometimes the boardroom technique. And he said that, as he started picking his guide. So he picked great business leaders. He had Abraham Lincoln. He had Andrew Carnegie. He said that after a while, the more you use them, the more he would go into his boardroom to ask his guides for advice, the more real they would get. He says in one instance, he was puzzled to see Abraham Lincoln get into an argument with another legendary gentleman at the table and then storm out. It was as if he no longer had control over them. But the beauty is, he would genuinely get powerful advice from them. He would ask them about decisions, ask them about ideas for the books he was writing, and it would come. So the thing about this panel of advisors is, it is genuinely a way to hack intuition. Nobody is saying that you're actually summoning guides. Okay, maybe you are, we don't know. But what's going on is that by creating these faces, these counselors that you can draw upon, it's as if you are giving permission for your own intuition to speak to you. In my case, through a giant panda. But still, you get that intuition speaking to you. It's a method of hacking intuition. And this is what you're going to be using. So, now let's go on to the full forgiveness method. Okay, first you're going to identify the person or act to forgive. Now remember, it could be an act. If it wasn't a particular person, it could be an act. In my chamber, as I was going through the whole program, had to forgive my national schooling curriculum for the horrible teaching standards and horrible experiences I had going to a public school. Okay, so it could be a person, it could be an act, it could be something massive. In my case, the natural schooling curriculum of my country. Then you're going to create a space. So in one forgiveness exercise, I had to forgive an abusive school principal. So this guy, when I was 15 years old, made me stand in a basketball court in the hot blazing sun for 2 hours. Because on that particular day, even though I was a top student and I was a well-behaved student, I forgot to pack my running shorts for phys ed class. And to this day, I just felt it was cruel and unusual punishment. I felt like fainting, and it was painful. So I picked the space in which I'm going to forgive him, and I see that space as that basketball court, no longer with the sun, but now under some shade. And I see him in front of me at one end of the court. I'm maybe about 12 feet away from him. I can see him. We're about to have that forgiveness conversation, and behind me are my guides. So I have the beautiful blonde on one side, the panda on one side, the beautiful brunette behind me. My guides are like a panel behind me. Okay, so you pick the space. It could be a living room, it could be your office, but it's a space that kind of reminds you of what happened. Now, if the space that reminds you of what happened is kind of, makes you uncomfortable because what happened was really cruel, then feel free to pick a beautiful imaginary space. It could be a mountaintop, it could be a gorgeous field with wonderful trees and a running stream, whatever makes you comfortable. Next, you're going to read the charges. So with the person in front of you, you are now going to imagine as if you're reading him the charges. So I told my principal, I could not believe that as a 14 or 15-year-old kid, you would be so cruel that you would make me stand in that court under the blazing sun to the point where I wanted to faint. I I'm upset with you for that. I hated you for that for the rest of my life. You made me hate school. You damaged my psyche. You put me under so much of pain. You reduced my self-esteem. I was a top student. I was the number one kid in my class in terms of great academic grades. Yet you humiliated me. You didn't have to do that. I simply forgot to pack my shorts that morning for phys ed. It wasn't even a problem. See, I'm reading him the charge. I'm feeling everything I felt as that child. And you do this for no more than 2 minutes. So, you can do this by setting a simple timer on your watch. You don't have to be accurate to the very second. Don't worry about that. But don't go ahead and do this for 5 or 10 minutes because it can be painful. It can be disturbing. So do it for about 2 minutes. Read him the charge. Now, this is very important. As you do this, feel pain. When we were doing this at the Institute, this particular moment is when our alpha waves would dip. Okay, and we wanted to see those alpha waves dip, so we'd see the numbers go down. So you want to feel the pain, and you should feel awake. You should feel at beta. That's okay. You're going to go back into alpha following this. So at this point, it's okay for your alpha to dip. And the important thing is feel the pain. Bring back those emotions, but not for very long. Feel the pain. Feel the anger. It's okay to clench your fist, to pound your fist on the bed, to yell if you're in a situation where you can, but feel that anger. But then you're going to stop. You're going to completely stop for a second or so, and you're going to go into a different state. And again, with the person in front of you in that particular space you've created, with your counselors behind you, you're now going to think of what you learned from the event. So you're now going to go into a peaceful state. And you're going to ask yourself, well, this happened to me. What did I learn from it? And I want you to think of whatever it is that you learned from being asked to stand in that basketball court. I learned resilience. I learned to tolerate pain. I learned that I could do it because I did stand. I did not faint. And I gained something from that. It made me a little bit stronger as a kid. From the person who stole from me, I learned to reorganize the operations department of my company so that there was no room for corruption or theft. I learned to do better background checks when I hire people. What did you learn from what happened? Now, maybe what happened was so abusive to you, like that kid, like that kid who was sexually abused at the age of 7. There's still something you learned. Maybe you learned to be stronger. Maybe you learned to trust yourself more. Maybe you learned whom not to trust. But either way, you learned something. Think of what you learned. That's the first part. And then think about what caused the other person to do what he did to you. Think about what the other person may have had happened to him in the past. See it from their eyes. There's a saying that one of my friends has, and it is the saying, hurt people hurt people. So she wrote a blog post about this. It was a beautiful blog post. Basically, she was driving into a parking lot, and she's a darker skinned woman. She was driving into a parking lot to park, and for a while she was just slowly easing her car into the parking spot. And a car behind her stopped, got very impatient because she was blocking his way, and he started banging on the horn. So she wind down the window and she just raised her hand to go to give the sign, "Give me a break, I'm just trying to park." And he wound down his window. He was a white man, and he said, "What is wrong with you people? You people can't even park properly." So she was shocked because she felt it was awfully racist to be called "you people." But she calmly finished parking, let this man drive off, and she was fuming. She felt so hurt, so violated by that comment. But then she remembered this saying, and she told me about it. She wrote about it in her blog post. Hurt people hurt people. And she forgave the man then and there. She said, well, maybe as inexcusable as what it is that he said, perhaps at some point in his life, something happened where he was hurt. Maybe he was hurt by someone of the color of my skin. Maybe something happened, but he was hurt, and he interpreted that hurt in a wrong way. And this caused him to make that racist comment. Hurt people hurt people. So see it from their eyes. What could they have gone through that made them hurt you? I thought about that principal who punished me on that basketball court. He was a former weightlifter who originated from Pakistan, and I thought about his childhood. Maybe in that Pakistan city or village where he was raised, maybe it was a different culture. Maybe it was a more strict culture. Maybe his father beat him. Maybe his principals beat him. And so he's hurt. And he believes that discipline requires punishment. Maybe as he was training to be a weightlifter before he became the principal of my school, he went through intense pain. Maybe his coach abused him. His coach pushed him to his mats. His coach was a real disciplinarian and he was hurt. And that's why he developed this attitude that you got to push people. And maybe that's why he did it to me. I thought about that man who stole money from me. Maybe he grew up in poverty. Maybe his father was an abusive man. Maybe his father was broken. His father had to steal and he witnessed that. And maybe he had 2 kids and the kids were sick. So now you're not justifying what you did. You're simply trying to see how they came up with their flawed conclusions. But you're seeing it from their eyes. And when you see it from their eyes, you aren't pardoning them, but you get to see that they were miserable, hurt, confused, and they made the wrong decisions. Now, when you start doing this, when you first start to see the lessons you could have gained from it, and when you see it from their eyes, James Hart says you're forgiving into love. You're actually displaying compassion. And that compassion, as it comes up, is very important in this process. You're forgiving into love. I like to remember a couple of these advanced techniques, okay, to really make this work. Number 1, know that you can forgive yourself. So far we've spoken about forgiving the other person, but you can also forgive yourself. I had a situation recently where I lost my temper at my son. He was stressed out because we'd been traveling. He was jet lagged and he was grumpy because kids get grumpy when they don't sleep. And he lashed out at me in a way, and I'd come back from work. I was stressed out because I hadn't been sleeping because my kids hadn't been sleeping. And I yelled at him and I raised my voice. And it was wrong and I shouldn't have done that because I yelled at him in a very, very, very loud, expressive way, and it shocked him and it put him in tears. And the next day I forgave myself for that because I was upset with myself. I didn't have to forgive him. I already did. He did nothing wrong. I had to forgive myself. So an advanced tactic is you can forgive yourself. Now, if you're forgiving yourself, you would simply bring yourself at whatever age the act happened and forgive yourself. So I forgave myself at the age of 14 for being socially awkward. I forgave myself at the age of 27 for some bad business decisions. Bring yourself in at that younger age and forgive yourself. And the second thing you want to do is re-script the event. So after you forgive yourself, you could re-script your event. When I forgave my 27-year-old self for bad business decisions, I re-scripted the event. This is a technique you learn, where I saw myself back in that situation, but this time making the right business decision. It's as if you're creating a fresh new memory. I could see myself back in that school at the age of 14 or 15 when I was being punished in that basketball court, and instead see that principal simply tell me off, politely, firmly, but tell me off for forgetting to pack my phys ed shorts for my class that day, but not punish me, knowing that simply pointing it out to me would be enough to correct the situation. So you can forgive yourself and then you can re-script the event. Okay? And some models to help. These are different models that you can bring in to help you make the exercise better. If you have a hard time forgiving someone because of what they did to you, because it was truly painful, buy the little children's book called The Little Soul and the Sun by Neale Donald Walsch. It's an amazing book, and there's an important quote from the book. The book is about a conversation between God and a little soul and a bigger soul, and how these souls decide to come together to earth to help each other grow. And the little soul wants to learn forgiveness. And so the little soul asks the big soul, who's also coming to earth, that when they mature into human beings, that the big soul should do something really, really, really cruel to the little soul, so that the little soul will forgive. It's a beautiful book. Neale Donald Walsch narrates it in a much better way than what I just did, but there's an amazing quote from that book, and that quote comes from the character of God in the book, and the quote is, "Remember, even in your darkest times, even in the most painful moments, even when you cannot understand why the other person did something so cruel to you, remember, I have sent you nothing but angels." He goes on to expand that every single act that happened to you, at some degree within you, you needed that, or you asked for that, or you had a soul pact with that other person, even if it was your horrible ex-husband or ex-wife, to teach you a lesson. And when you view the world like that, forgiveness becomes so much easier. I have sent you nothing but angels. Hurt people. That's the second model. Whoever hurt you did it because they were hurt too. See them as that hurt child. Okay, and now that you've learned these models, we are going to go on with the forgiveness exercise. So this will take about 15 minutes. Okay, and I'm going to guide you through it in detail the first time around. So what you want to do is, at this point, you want to make sure you have selected the person you want to forgive. Now, since you're doing this for the first time, don't pick someone who may have done something truly, truly, truly hard to forgive. Forgiveness is always doable, but sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. You're going to pick a smaller event. In my case, it could be, it's when I picked myself for raising my voice at my child. It could be a smaller event where you made a bad call in business and maybe lost a couple of $1,000, but not collapsed the entire business. It could be a waiter. If you really want to start easy, it could be a waiter who was rude to you at a restaurant, or a taxi driver who, overcharged you. Something minor. Okay, at this point, you should have picked the person. Now pick the space. You're now going to pick the space. Think about the space where this happened. You could come back to the same restaurant where the waiter wronged you, except this time see it empty. Or you could pick a neutral space. It could be a field. It could be a sporting arena. It could be not with a crowd around you, but a beautiful field. If that gives you comfort, that's something to identify with. Sometimes I pick a beautiful hillside with a view of surrounding greenery, but pick a space. And now, invite your 3 guides or your counselors. They're going to be behind you. See counselor 1 come, see counselor 2 come, and see counselor 3 come. Okay, now at this point, you've selected the space, you've selected the person, you have called upon the counselors. Now we're going to begin meditation. So I'm going to give you a minute or so. You can play any meditation sound you want. If you have Om Vana on your iPhone, you can go ahead and play any guided meditation audio from Om Vana. So any meditation sound. If you don't have sound, that's even great. It means you don't need it. But find a comfortable spot. Now use whatever technique you have previously used to go into your state of meditation. I'm going to help you by guiding you through a technique right now. So go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to take a deep breath and exhale. Take another deep breath and exhale. Take a third deep breath and exhale. Now, draw your attention to the top of your head, your scalp. Feel your scalp relax. You can feel your scalp relax if you bring back to mind the feeling of someone giving you a nice, gentle head massage. Feel that feeling of relaxation flow gently downward to your forehead, to your eyes. Feel your eyelids. Feel how relaxed your eyelids are. Feel that feeling of relaxation flow gently downward to your cheeks, your nose, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your upper arms, your hands, all the way down to your fingers. Feel a little tingle of relaxation in your fingers. Feel that feeling of relaxation now flow gently downward. Your chest, your abdomen, all the way down to your hips, your thighs, your knees, your calves, your feet, all the way down to your toes. You're now in a relaxed state of mind. I'll give you a few moments in solitude, but without my voice, to do whatever other ritual or guided meditation exercise you can think of to help you go even deeper. Now feel yourself in the space that you have selected for this particular forgiveness exercise. You can choose a different space for each exercise, but for this exercise, for this particular person you're forgiving, see yourself in that space now. Now feel the presence of your guides behind you, all 3 of them. Guide 1 has now appeared. Guide 2 has now appeared. Guide 3 has now appeared. Feel them behind you. Know that they are there to guide you, to support you, that you're safe. In front of you, see the person you need to forgive. And we're now going to start the 2-minute timer. Mentally read out the charges. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to clench your fist. It's okay to pound your bed. Read the charges. Tell them. Tell the guides why did you feel wrong by what they did. Be expressive. Feel the pain. Feel the emotion. Imagine them listening to you as you read them the charges. You have their full attention. They are listening. Be as expressive as you can. If you feel yourself coming out of alpha, out of that relaxed state, that's okay. Continue feeling the anger, the pain, the hurt. Continue telling them how badly they made you feel because of what they did. Wrap up now. The 2 minutes are up. Now we're going to go to the forgiveness. Now, see them still in front of you and ask yourself, what did I learn from what happened? Mentally, talk to yourself. Talk to them. Talk about what you learned from it. What is different in your life? What do you know now that you did not know before? How did this make you grow? You're going to have 3 minutes to complete this. Think about all the ways you've changed, you've grown. You're not the same person you used to be. What have you learned? What is different? What does your family learn, or your company learn, or your soul learn, or your heart learn? Mentally, tell them what you've learned. Verbalize it mentally. Now, try to see what happened from their viewpoint. Think of them as a child. What could they have gone through as a child to cause them to hurt you like they did? You don't have to know exactly what happened to them as a child. Imagine. See them being hurt. Hurt people hurt people. What could have happened to them that was so painful, so wrong, that it caused them to have whatever belief they had or flaw they had, where they in turn hurt you? Now see it from their eyes. How might they have seen the situation? However flawed their view may be, see it from their eyes. What were they seeing? You know they were hurt. You know they have a misguided view. What in their mind did they see? You're not justifying what they did. You're simply seeing how, from their flawed view, they might see what happened. Now as you're done, forgive them. Tell them that you forgive them. You are coming from a position of power. You are coming from a position of strength. Tell them that you forgive them. See them as a misguided little child coming towards you. And now, give them a loving hug. Feel them truly sorry for what they did. They did not know the wrongness of what they did. Give them a hug, or a high five, or a pat on the back. And as you do this, see yourself as the position of strength. See them as in being sorry for what they did. But hug them, let them know it's okay. Display compassion, and let it go. And as they walk away from you, ask your guides, am I done for now? That simple phrase, am I done for now? Look at the first guide and imagine if that first guide is nodding a yes or shaking his or her head to say a no, or verbalizing a yes or a no. Go on to the second guide. Go on to the third guide. The question is, am I done for now? And if even one guide says no, then repeat the exercise today. It will take you another 5 minutes. Start with expressing anger for what they did, and then go on to forgiving them. But if all 3 guides say that you're done for now, then consider yourself done. Ask your guides. Now, if your guide says no, you can continue this exercise on another day, or later today when we finish this training. If your guide said yes, congratulations, you are done with this particular forgiveness ritual. You may now open your eyes. How do you feel? Hopefully, pretty good. It may have been painful at a certain point, but at this point you should feel pretty good, and you should also feel strong. Strong because forgiveness is an attribute of those that are strong, not for the weak. You know, after I finished my training at this institute, as we went back home to our cities, one of the fellow students texted me, WhatsApped me, and sent me this image. It was a word he found on the web called unfuckwithable. When you're truly at peace and in touch with yourself, nothing anyone says or does bothers you, and no negativity can touch you. When you learn to truly master this art of forgiveness, you become unfuckwithable. Because yes, people can wrong you. Yes, they can momentarily make you feel pain, but they cannot make that last within you. Nobody can fuck with you, and you are truly unfuckwithable. So remember that word, and remember that presence, that state. Unfuckwithable is an amazing ability to have. Gandhi said, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. So remember, when you're doing this exercise, you are the one in that attribute with that feeling of strength. The other person is the one who is weak, and you are going to forgive them and give them compassion. And the more you do this, the better and stronger your forgiveness muscle becomes, and soon you truly, truly become at peace with yourself, unfuckwithable. And when you do this, not only do you see that your brain ability goes up, your alpha wave goes up, but you know, when I went to the institute, really the main thing we were doing is forgiving. But what was interesting was people who were coming out from that first 7 days would show amazing things. They would be more at peace. They would have the brainwave attributes of someone who has practiced Zen Buddhist meditation for about 40 years. And in one case, they even found that IQ points went up 11.7 points. That's astonishing. People had clearer thinking, they were less reactive, they could forgive better, they were more at peace. I found my creativity was through the roof. And I went online and did a couple of IQ tests and I scored full marks. It was incredible. So when you start doing this regularly, you will begin to see incredible results. So continue doing this exercise. I wish you luck. And as you go into this next week before the next training, try to do this at least once a day. Okay, you can do this. You can take this particular chunk and plug it into your 6-phase meditation. Because remember, phase 3 is forgiveness. But don't do the basic phase 3 that is available on the web. Do this advanced mode of phase 3. It extends the exercise, but if you do it every day, and remember, it only takes about 5 minutes, you start to see dramatic results. Okay? And sometimes you may want to carve out half an hour of time and just do this forgiveness exercise over and over again, 5-minute loops, so that you can forgive everything that has happened to you in the past. Below this training, we're going to cut out the particular chunk of this exercise and save it as an audio file that you can play if you want to go through the guided exercise again. So I carve out like sometimes, once a month or so, a 30-minute chunk of time where I'm just going to go and forgive everything that happened to me in the past. And remember, you can forgive people, you can forgive events, you can forgive yourself, but it's a beautiful act to forgive. That's it for this training. I'll see you on the Q&A and I'll see you next week.